Thanks for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Listing, where we talk about the business of real estate outside of the listing environment. I am your host, Jeremy Madore, and today I have the pleasure of sitting with
Matthew Tommasiello, branch manager at Semper Home Loans.
Matthew, you came to us on referral from Tracy Harding, a mutual business acquaintance and friend of ours. And she recommended you because she felt that you had a lot to offer in a conversation environment. So I appreciate you taking the time and joining us in the studio today.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm happy. I'm happy to be here, and I think it'll be a fun time.
Wonderful. So let's just get right into it. You and I were talking prior to starting recording off air about hiring for thinking.
Yes.
And it's funny because I was talking to you about the elements of hiring that we have to consider would be the ability to follow systems as well as apply creativity. And I used the term creativity because it's a bit different than just general thinking, right? It's not so much critical thinking as much as it is critical thinking with the context of the challenges in front of you. And in real estate media production, we have a lot of room for flexibility and creativity. Whereas in your line of work, I would assume creativity is a bad thing.
Correct.
So let's kind of flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah. So, well, actually, yeah, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying creativity is bad in my world, but it's creativity can get you in a bit of trouble, right? We always want to stay away from that. But that thinking component to it is very important, just because we have systems, processes, guidelines in place for everything, guidelines that we have to follow that are federally mandated.
Sure.
And essentially they're trying to take the gray, which is real life, and make it black or white to fit into some type of government program or regulation.
Right.
And
so everything has to have a box.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it's the thinking part of it, and it can be the creative part. We just constantly have to find ways to get, squares into, round holes.
Right. Right.
Things like that.
So your job is to create contrast in a gray environment so that you end up with a black and a white.
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so you have your must-haves that you got to hit, I would assume.
Yep.
But then there is some flexibility within the areas that are continually gray. Are there continually gray areas in your industry?
Yes. Yeah, there are. I guess to contextualize it a bit, like say income, right? There are black and white debt to income limits that we have to meet.
Abide by.
Right.
Yep.
Within calculating income, there can be very varying ways that people are paid, whether it's salary, if they have a bonus component, commission, or variable, right? So take somebody that, say, has a variable component to their income, right? Like where the thinking comes in, it's like, how can we present this to our underwriting team in a way that, hits the points that they need to hit, and is still acceptable.
Yeah, so you have to create the packaging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Create the packaging, create the the story, that type of thing.
Right, and do so in a way that you can stand behind it, and the lender as a whole can stand behind it.
Exactly.
Right. You don't want to create like a straw man, as it were.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't create something like that. That'd be trouble for everybody.
Yeah.
And the industry as a whole, since 2022, when rates started increasing.
Yep.
Everybody is very concerned with covering their butts. It's in our line of work, the appraisal side of it, the title side of it. Everybody is just on a little bit of a heightened awareness level.
Sure.
For that type of stuff.
I think rightfully so, because the risks got bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, of course, with the pricing going up in conjunction with those rate increases, they started going up exponentially, the risks.
Yep.
I can respect that. So we were talking about hiring. Tell me a little bit about you, your team, your background, how many years you've been in the industry, et cetera.
Yeah, of course. I've been in the industry. July will be 10 years. And our team right now consists of myself and one other person.
Okay.
That's down. We had 2 other people for the last couple of years. But one of those people, combination, just he was good at his job, just didn't fit in how we operated. So now it's that the other person on our team kind of picked up a bit more of the workload. But yeah, that the hiring process to me is just the toughest part of my business, hands down.
Yeah. Do you think it's your business specific, or is it general hiring? I have to challenge that.
Yeah, I would venture to guess probably 90% hiring in general.
Okay.
Just unless it's a very like mundane, checklist oriented position.
Sure.
Like anybody can do that kind of stuff. You show up and
arguably,
you
but
do
yes,
it, right? That type of thing. But yeah, with having a small team, and the nature of our business is just very customer centric. Customer centric, relationship centric. That we have to provide certain level of service in my mind, and to get somebody to that level or willing to be at that level isn't always easy. A lot of people, our industry is not a 9-to-5 industry, and we try to make, or I try to make these positions as 9-to-5 as possible.
Right.
That's what people are signing up for.
Generally, yeah. Generally, unless you're, you say that's what people are signing up for. I like to challenge people's thought processes. So if I come across as combative or arguing with you, it's only so that we can come to a higher level of clarity for what the solution actually is versus what we think it might be. And I have no particular in-depth knowledge as to what it is that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. But I would contest the words that you just used only because I think in my experience, what I have found when I go to hire people is if I project that there's going to be a hesitancy on the applicant's part to allow for specific, work hours or work days to be honored, I'm setting myself up for failure.
Correct.
Because it's like this. You don't know what your house is worth until you actually get an offer on it. Right?
Yep.
You don't know how many people are available for a job that you have in mind. Your ideal candidate would do X, Y, and Z. Maybe those are big asks, but you don't know whether or not they're a big ask until you put it out to the market and say, hey, is anybody willing to do this for this salary at these times? And maybe you get a slew of applicants all saying, yeah, that works for me. Now, all of a sudden, it's not a big ask anymore. Now it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know that people are out there that would actually do that kind of thing. And I'm not saying for a cheaper rate or whatever. I'm talking about like being able to work overnight, being able to work weekends, being able to work just nights and weekends or whatever. Those are all things that you or I may not want to do, but there are people out there who want to do those hours because it works best for their family schedule, because maybe their partner or spouse, or maybe they're a single parent and they want to work when the kids are asleep versus, in school or whatever, the kind of thing. So there's always the potentiality for hiring people that would do the thing that we might not want to do ourselves or the way that we'd want to do them ourselves. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I agree with a lot of what what you said. The part I don't agree with is in, and again, I'm in this context, I'm speaking specifically for the roles I'm hiring
please,
for.
Please.
Right. I call them LP, loan partner 1 and 2. They are either helping on the pre-approval side of things, or the contract to close side. We consciously, like we pay way above market. Probably by about 30%.
Okay.
35%. And we do ask that they do more than
market. Okay.
Right. For their specific positions.
All right.
Again, my opinion, I think it's justified because of the salary they're getting.
Sure.
What the part, or I get in my experience, the type of person that is, say, a loan processor, or a loan partner 1 helping on the pre-approval side, they don't want to be a loan officer, which is perfectly fine, right? Like they don't. I call it. I heard it about a month ago. I loved it, but they call our industry this. Somebody called our industry the circus. Because every day you don't know what you're going to get, like, what time your phone's going to start. It's like, that's actually perfect. So like, I consider it, I signed up for the circus. Yeah. Right. Every day I'm a part of that circus. These positions, the types of people that are in these positions don't sign up for the circus. Like they expect you to manage the circus. They expect you to manage the circus. Yeah. And they fall into the workload that, that's there, which is, again, 95% of the time, a 9 to 5 workload, where if, again, take our team, I'll see our guy, I'll see Joe, his name's Joe, but I'll see Joe on the computer at 9:00 at night some nights. And that's because he's busy. He knows he didn't get his stuff done. His kids are sleeping now, and he's back to work. Mm-hmm. But the normal person in that position, and there have been a few of them, like they don't want to be doing that at 9:00 at night. I don't think anybody wants to be doing that at 9:00 at night. Correct. Like, I agree with that. Nobody wants to, but they see that as, hey, this isn't my job. Right. Let me edit what I just said. I don't think anybody wants to work outside their normal work hours, whatever those chosen hours would be, at all. Right. Yeah. Like if being the business owner myself, if my phone rings weekends or late at night, I know it's because like generally something fell apart. Correct. Right. Because we have significant systems in place, and we've honestly, for lack of a better term, our customers have acclimated to our business operation to the point where generally the work hours are respected. And if they call outside hours, it's calling the office line, they leave a message, and we get back to them in the morning. Yep. Right. But if my cell phone rings and it's a customer, chances are something really hit the fan. And then I know at that point, because it's on me, the buck stops with me, that I need to, hop to. I do not expect anyone else in my company to do that. Yep. I am always extremely impressed and pleased when somebody offers to. I don't even care if they do. The fact that anybody would say, hey, I can take care of that. My immediate response is no, stay off the computer, go spend time with your family as much as humanly possible, unless, of course, I'm incapable of doing it myself because I'm also not home, in which case I will take someone up on that offer. But I think that controlling those incidences is definitely the job that you or I would have to really key in on the most, so that when people sign up for what they think is a train ride, it doesn't turn into a roller coaster. Yep. It's a roller coaster for us because we manage the comings and goings. And then maybe as you grow large enough, you have a team that manages the roller coaster so that your system employees
are enjoying what they think is a train ride. We just have dampers installed so that nobody knows, right? And so that's where the circus turns into a organized chaos.
Yep.
Right. I don't envy anybody that's at the 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 4 or 5 people teams. I don't envy anybody in that department, because I would say that categorically that is the most frustrating size for a company to be, because you don't have things granularized to such a degree that people are responsible for only 1 or 2 things. Everybody's wearing many hats.
Correct.
And hiring for many hat wearer, that's hard.
It is.
That's hard. Hiring for a single or a 2 hat wearer, significantly more sensible. I wouldn't use the term easy, but it makes a lot more sense to do that. Correct. And I can definitely see how that might translate to, having to go from 2 people to 3. That's significant growth.
Yeah. And that I 100% agree with that. That is the hard part. When I said thinking earlier, I think of it as, and I consider myself very fortunate with with our team currently, but it's the idea in my head of, hey, these are our, say, top 3 job duties, and these are the metrics we're going to be measured on every month. Then, time allowing, these are 4, 5, and 6. We get to these when we can, but 1, 2, and 3 have to get done. What I say is, or what in my mind when I say thinking part is the most challenging.
Yeah.
Is, hey, our job's to do 1, 2, and 3. But while we're doing 1, 2, and 3, that might be a list, say 1 to 10. And 1 to 10, we get done, checklist, however you want to do it. But if number 7, I guess morphs into 7-1, 7-2, 7-3, even though it's not number 7, that still needs to be done.
Right.
And we struggled with that for a while with some of the people on our team that were, hey, I did 1 through 10. That's what you told me. They're like, and it's like, I get that. But in our world, it's not black and white. Everything's gray. We need
so they were operating blinders on.
It was very much like, well, I'm going off of this sheet.
Eesh.
And
okay.
And that type of person doesn't fit on the, like you were just saying, in a team that's, say, 2, 3 people.
No. So you're hiring for different qualifications at that point. You're not looking for a strict rule system follower. You're looking for an adaptive system follower is what you're looking for.
Correct.
Because you can't codify a person. Some people, I think, work very well in a codified environment. We have a few people here at our agency who do, but they work in codified jobs, so it works. Yep. But to expect those same individuals to also have the wherewithal to think beyond the problem, right? So it's like this podcast, Beyond the Listing. It's not about the transaction. It's about the spirit of everything that involved around the transaction, right? Yep. Because the entirety of all of that boils down to the transaction, right? Like, it allows the transaction to occur. Because if we didn't have this bigger thing called life and dreams and goals, right, you'd never have that transaction there, right? Similarly, in a job, if we didn't have, and I'm gonna pick on Taylor for a moment because she's piloting the camera right now. If we didn't have a job that required somebody to edit video for us, she wouldn't be here today, because I wouldn't be hiring for somebody that did that as their core responsibility. But that's only about half of what Taylor is going to be doing for us. I hope that it's at most half. My hope and goal is for her position to extend well beyond that and do creative problem solving, maybe even forward thinking stuff that I can't even talk about right now because I don't even have ideas for it yet. Right.
Don't know what it is yet.
Correct. Yeah. Which is the best part about growth is that, you can do whatever you want kind of thing, but only if 1, 2, and 3 are taken care of. Right. So her 1, 2, and 3 is to edit podcasts, edit social videos, and do a very transactional sort of systemed approach. But beyond that, to have her think about 7.1, 7.2, 7.3, that's a whole other mindset like you're talking about. And it gets to be challenged hiring for somebody that has that wide horizon view while also follows rules really well.
Correct.
So that it meets your industry.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's exactly it. Trying to find somebody that you can give them, the parameters. In my opinion, the parameters, like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we have to do. This is how we do it. No, you go get it done. And naturally, like the natural learning curve that you're going to be there with the, support systems process, but just that the type of person that's like, yeah, okay, I don't need to ask this question, or before I ask this question, I'm going to try to find a solution.
Sure.
And that's the type of person that we look for. And, that when you get to the qualitative side of things, it just makes it, tougher.
Yeah.
Because it's not, can you do A, B, and C?
Sure.
Yeah. So
that's interesting. Yeah. Wow. All right. I like having these kinds of conversations,
yeah,
man.
Me too.
I guess I assumed incorrectly, very incorrectly, that the mortgage industry was a bit more granular than that need, because I would have incorrectly assumed that the black and whites that you guys have to follow and hit wouldn't have that ability to approach the job with blinders off, question asking, so that a 7A, 7B, 7C line item would sometimes exist.
Yeah.
And hiring somebody that was a systems expert, if you would actually have its own set of problems associated with it in the loan processing role.
Yeah. And it's certainly not 100% of the time, right? It's
no, but
like the way I think of it,
when it happens,
correct. The way I think of it, it's we take 100% of the referrals we get or loans we close. No, it's good, not loans, referrals we get.
Sure.
30% of them are going to be straightforward, black and white, and super simple, easy files.
30% is a low number.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then the other 30%, say there's another 30% that, or 33, is these people are just not going to qualify.
Sure.
Or, just not be able to buy a home.
Yep.
Right. And it's that middle third that us actually thinking through problems, trying to find different ways to look at things or phrase things like where you actually get to influence, not just those borrowers, but the process.
Right.
Where you go to one lender and they're telling you you're approved for $400,000. You go to a different lender, they're telling you you're approved for $500,000. And it's which one's right, who's wrong, and
sure.
that type of thing.
Sure.
So it's that middle group that all of this basically revolves around.
Interesting.
Some work, some don't. It's that middle section that,
yeah,
in my opinion, that's where they become very important, because you don't like the worst thing that can happen is you give somebody bad advice in a referral-based business. You give somebody bad advice, and then they go to somebody else that gives them better advice,
right?
Or looks at it in a different light, takes more time on it, and now your partner's like, oh well, maybe I shouldn't be sending Matt everything, because who else has he done this to?
Yeah, what percentage of my referrals are going to be dead ends with him?
Dead ends, or what percentage of my referrals bought but could have bought the home they really wanted?
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. All right. I can see that. I can see that. Because as you were talking about the third, I was like, oh yeah, that happens in us. But then you got to that last part and I'm like, no, that doesn't happen with us. Because what ends up happening for us is, similarly to you, like there is a portion, and I'm not sure if it's a third or not, but a portion of homes that we walk into that truly are turnkey, ready to go. They don't photograph themselves, but they make our jobs super easy to do.
Yep.
Right. We're more efficient with them. We have better fulfillment, better joy. There's maybe inspired conversation with the realtor or the homeowner. It allows the job to be more satisfactory, right?
Yep.
So it's a net positive experience, right? And then, of course, there's the net negative experiences that, you walk into an out-of-date, messy home with, maybe a bad or challenging situation there with, whether it be whoever is occupying the home or maybe a divorce situation, right? Like you have like these hard times, right? Or maybe, no matter what you do, you're not going to make the home look good, right? Those are like the least rewarding homes, right?
Yeah.
And then you have that middle third, we're just going to call it the thirds like you did, where the right photographer with the right applied effort can make gold happen just because of their capacity to think around problems, right? And so, yeah, I can see alignment there. For us, our photographers continually work with the same realtors, right? We might change out a photographer or two depending on the season, depending on what the realtor's asking for. But we have photographers out, throughout southern New Hampshire and Massachusetts, so that we have territory coverage is essentially what we go for. And so as a result, there's a lot of rinse and repeat business from realtors within those regions. We're not dealing with one-off clientele like your industry does on a typical basis. I mean, what's your repeat clientele? Like probably 2 or 3%?
No. Yeah. I actually say no and yeah, because I don't have that number.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But it's not a large portion.
In terms of in terms of referrals, I do. In terms of referrals, 15% of my referrals are
return
past clients.
Past clients. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Ours is more like 90% are past clients.
Yep.
Right. Just because of the regularity that we, enjoy. In a gold rush, you sell shovels. We're selling shovels, right? And having to, farm new audience all the time, it must be an exhausting thing.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's, that 80-20
or at least like time
rule.
consuming.
Yeah. Well, yes, 100%. And this all comes back to the hiring conversation.
Yeah.
That 80-20 rule where 80% of our business is from 20% of our partners.
Sure.
Right. So it's the only way, especially, take this year, national average, however, it's going to be below 4 million homes sold.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I think they said that was going to be the lowest number in 34 years. The only way to grow, we have to have the same agents that we're currently working with grow, or we have to find new agents.
Yep.
Right. And when again, tying it all in, when there's an issue on the team and somebody say it's not thinking and coming to you to ask questions all the time, it's taking you away from spending that time doing what you need to do to drive business growth.
Yeah. You need people that are self-directed and have the capacity of creating their own solutions, right? Within a set of parameters. Yep. Yeah. And trusting somebody, because that's what it comes down for you, is the ability to delegate that and to a degree blindly trust, or at least trust but verify that's taking place. Correct. Right. Like the best, we're going to pick on Taylor. The best that Taylor can get to right now is that she is able to establish her ability to edit content without any oversight from anybody else, so that she can go straight to the customer with the delivery instead of having it QC'd by somebody, right? Yep. And once and I think we're pretty darn close to that already, but once we get to that established context with her, we'll be able to really offload a lot more work. And it's going to be more efficient for everybody, including her. Correct. Because she's not going to have that, that pause on the file She's not going to send it off to somebody else and then get it bounced back to her and then send it to the client, right? So it reduces the middleman kind of traffic. And so there's a certain efficiency that is achieved once you get to that process, but getting to that process is itself the hurdle.
Correct. Getting to that process is the hurdle. It's, I say it not too often because honestly, we have so many systems and processes in place that we don't have, blow up files. I genuinely, I can't remember a loan that we've disclosed that we haven't closed in the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
So that just, that doesn't happen. We work very hard up front to make sure that doesn't happen. Right? Yeah. So it goes hand in hand, but yeah, the delegation, the trust, it's I don't know who said it. Maybe Reagan, trust but verify.
Yeah.
Right. But like that kind of thing where, there has to be trust there. Cause if not, life's miserable. So there has to be trust there. And then it's, they're just, if something pops up, we want to catch it quick enough where we can address it. And then we just make a slight amendment to our systems and processes to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So the real estate world, for realtors specifically, or real estate agents, I guess, more broadly, has a exceptionally startling fall off rate where within the first 5 years, only something like 20% make it.
Yep.
And that's the attrition, with that is just honestly very humbling, because a lot of people get into, real estate sales thinking incorrectly that it is a quick way to make money and sustainable.
Quick way.
And it is neither quick nor sustainable.
Yeah.
The sustainability is actually in the slow.
Correct.
It's not in the quick. But people get into it with a quick mindset. So therefore it doesn't become sustainable. Does your industry suffer similar problems?
Yes. It does. I think there are a few things that, I guess, help our industry or help the newcomers in our industry. One, there's just less loan officers than realtors. Second, if you are a newer or struggling loan officer, somewhat like a realtor, you typically realtor would try to join a team, be fed opportunities,
right? Where
LOs can go to banks, the big banks, community banks, to get a small salary in that business coming in. But by and large, yes, it is. It's my opinion. I think probably 90% of the people that get into the industry in general, the combination of think that it's transactional and underestimate how relational it is.
Yeah.
And I know I did.
Okay.
Right? So when I got into the industry,
what did you do before?
I was an auditor. I audited used car dealerships.
Oof.
That was terrible.
That sounds terrible.
It was.
Oh man!
It honestly, I would walk into a dealership, and you would just see everybody run.
Oh, you were like the OSHA guy at a construction site.
Exactly.
Oh man!
Nobody wanted to talk to me, and it was. To be honest, I enjoyed it. It was I enjoyed it because, I was on a salary at the time. I had a company car, gas card,
sure,
that kind of thing. And I would just get my work done like 2-3 hours every day.
Okay.
And so the way that business worked, I had a tablet, turn it on Sundays, and it would show me how many dealerships I had to go to that week.
Okay.
Some weeks
you had a punch list.
Some weeks it was 40.
Yeah.
Some weeks it was 7.
Okay.
Right. So on a week that it was 7, I'd just be like, okay, I'm going to do, 2, 2, 2, 1.
Yeah.
And I'd be done by 11 a.m. every day, and I just go golf.
Right.
So I liked it. Looking back on it, I think it was probably the best thing I could have done to get into this industry.
That's interesting.
Not in the traditional sense, in the sense that, this is not to disparage the used car industry, but
it's okay. We don't have those viewers.
The stereotypes, right? The stereotypes, the sleazy salesman type thing. So I would go, if you owned a dealership, be like, hey, I see we're financing 10 of your cars. I only see 9 of them on the lot. Where is the 10th? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I sold that a couple of days ago. I just haven't paid you guys yet.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, can I see the bill of sale? And you look at the bill of sale, and it's it was sold 35 days ago. So like that type of stuff. So I had to have difficult conversations,
right,
with people about their finances. Where it was like, hey,
small business owners,
like I get
that's
it,
hard.
Like, hey, like you got paid for this,
right?
You haven't paid us,
right?
We need to get paid.
Right.
We have the title.
I got kids at home. I got mouths to
exactly,
feed. Yeah.
And so, and when I say I was on an island, I worked that job for maybe 3 years, and I maybe talked to my supervisor twice. So it was just like I had to deal with it, send in the report. And again, I just had to have tough conversations that I had never had before. And I didn't have anybody to either have those for me or help me with them.
And that's how this was a good starter for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because then it was like, I've just got to call these agents that don't know me.
Yeah. Sure.
Like I've been, people have told me to F off for the last 3 years. Like, this is fine.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about rejection, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you develop a thick skin with it. Mm-hmm. And I think that business-wise, a lot of people struggle with that. I know that I struggle with that.
Yeah, I do too.
It's one of the reasons that I have a hard time with sales in general. I'm not a sales guy. I am a relationships guy. Mm-hmm. I love building networks and understanding people's backgrounds and storylines so that I can tie that into conversations with them, so that I can put my trust in them and have them put their trust in me. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, deliver on the things that we say we're going to do. So obviously that's integrity, right? And so being able to use a combination of my own and our own integrity in conjunction with those networking capacities has itself been the business builder. I'm horrible at sales because the rejection is just, it's hard. It's really hard. But yeah, I can definitely see how that might do well for you.
Yeah. And again, like the fallout rate within our industry, when I started, I was naive naturally. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Most people are.
I worked at a community bank, and honestly, how I learned, I just messed everything up for 2 years. It was a terrible way to learn, right? The bank I started at did not have like a training program. Like their training program
that's on them.
No, it definitely is. But like their training program, like I sat with a processor for 1 day.
Yeah.
I sat with an underwriter for 1 week.
Yeah.
They gave me a computer and said, "Here, go get loans."
That's far more of a training program than I've heard before, to be honest with you. My niece works for a bank.
Okay.
And it's a credit union.
Okay.
And they don't have anything whatsoever. And she got put into her job position with absolutely no qualifications at all. And then was held to task with her KPIs based on things that were not communicated to her. That's you're creating your own disaster stories at that point.
100%. 100%.
But you learn from those mistakes.
Exactly. So I learned from them. Like I didn't have any problem. I would just walk into the, underwriting processing where my boss sat at the time. And like, I would literally walk in and like the underwriting manager would stick her head up over the cubicle and just yell at me. Be like, "What are you doing passing this in? This is garbage." Like, hey, I don't know it's garbage. Like, okay, you're telling me now I know that. But it was just that's how it went for, a year.
But you were so used to that for 3 years with auditing.
Yeah, it was just like, it didn't matter to me. I just, I was one of those people that came in that thought it was going to be quick, easy money.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, well, whatever. Yeah, and obviously I learned that wasn't the case, but it was, I thought if you just did a good job, right? Like once I got past the mistakes, if I just do a good job and deliver on what I tell people, business is just going to flow my way. And that didn't happen, and that doesn't happen today.
No,
and that, like, the networking part of it, all of that side of it, I think that was the second part that people miss, is that like you don't like sales, right? Like I say I don't like sales. I think I'm growing into liking it more, but it's like my responsibility isn't to do loans, right? My responsibility is to have a team that does them well for me.
Okay.
My responsibility is to generate referrals that turn into loans.
Okay.
Right. And to, and this is a question for you now. I don't know. Is it some type of, in that context for you, is it like your job is to generate the big ideas or the business coming in as opposed to actually doing the stuff? So it's a form of sales. Yeah,
it is. So it's your intake, right? Your lead gen, your funnel, however you want to phrase it. And I know those are, different things. But for me, like my current role is to essentially groom and generate people, people that are highly capable of growth, of expansion, of ideas, and then recognize when people have good ideas and employ those ideas by asking them to get implemented and delegating them to the individuals who I feel are best cut out for those ideas. And then, of course, those ideas turn into actionable sales. Maybe it's an add-on, maybe it's an augmentation to a product that we already have. Maybe it's a whole new line of work, which is what this whole podcast thing is for us. And it's not about selling the customer on something so much as making sure that our employees, our team, understands the direction that we're heading, the intent on what we're trying to accomplish, what our mission, what our values are. And so long as we're eating, sleeping, and breathing that, everything else will come, right? So it's not just about doing quality work. It's about why you're doing the work that you're doing. Is it just transactional? Then you're gonna die. Like that's what ends up happening with the transactional mindset. You're gonna die. At some point, your business is gonna fizzle. It's just gonna go downhill. Like we had a market downturn this year. We still photographed just as many homes this year as we did last year, which means that our percentage went up because everybody's percentages went down, right? You said 4 million transactions. We've done 4,000 transactions. And I get that. That's 0.1%. I get that. Nationally, we did 0.1%. I'm okay with that stat, So from a percentage standpoint, I think that we're growing in that department, but the numbers of that are significantly less valuable to me than whether or not the people that did business with us believed in doing business with us. Right?
Those relationships were strengthened, deepened.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because right now, there's a lot of media production options on the market ever since COVID. And Keith has been with me for 7 years, 8 this coming year. And he has seen the fluctuation in business as well as I have. Prior to COVID, we were one of, I can't say handful, but it's pretty darn close to a handful of photographers in Massachusetts. Okay. Like this was like, you had the tiger by the tail prior to COVID. When COVID came out and all the photographers essentially had to stop doing what they were doing because weddings got canceled, portrait sessions weren't an option, corporate events were done, all that, right? Nobody was photographing infants. All of the other photography genres ceased to be able to operate for 6 to 8 months, right? And luckily, some of them were able to get back into it because they stuck it through. They, maybe had like a business loan, or they took the self-employed, the unemployment kind of thing for self-employed individuals. We didn't have that need to do so because the real estate market didn't stop. And so we just kept going, and a bunch of photographers joined the fold because they had the wide angle lens, they had the tripod, they had the camera, they needed the income, they wanted the income, and they wanted to continue working. And voila, all of a sudden we have hundreds, if not thousands, of competitors throughout New England, but Massachusetts being our focal. And so that was a very different shift. And so for this shift of downturn in number of homes sold, it's also brought with it more of a pinch in the photographer market, where you have to differentiate yourself. And how are you going to do that? Well, there's only so much you can do with the quality of a photograph. Mm-hmm. There is a point at which you cannot get much better than what you're doing. And to do so would require maybe gear that's like $20,000, $30,000, which doesn't really make sense for what we're doing for an application, right? Mm-hmm. And so what you need to do is you need to differentiate yourself in the customer service, in the relationships building, all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's where we do our sales.
Yep.
So there's a long answer to your question.
No, that was great.
Yeah. So it's just interesting to hear how unlike while similar our industries are in regards to these common shared values, or need anyway. Mm-hmm. So what's coming down the horizon for you? I know that you don't have control over rates, you don't have control over a lot of the black and whites, right?
Yeah.
But you have control over the grays. What does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I'm very excited for 2025. At a market level, I think people have, after 2 years of folks like me, I genuinely, I think, trying to educate them that this is not 2008.
Yeah.
Rates aren't coming back down to 2.5%.
Yeah.
We have a supply issue, all of that type of
Significant
stuff.
Supply issue.
I'm pretty excited about, the buyer optimism.
Yep.
It is closely tied to interest rates.
Yep.
Every time rates come, down below 7 or 6.5,
no doubt you see an influx,
uptick. But yeah, we're excited. It's just on our end, it's just what we've been doing for 10 years now, which is just trying to develop new relationships, deepen our current relationships, and continuously tweak our process to make it as good as it can be for the customer.
Yep.
So it's very simple. It's not it's not like, hey, we're gonna reinvent the mortgage wheel. It's just we're gonna try to be a little bit better in every area.
Okay. Is there a category of loans that you most specialize in?
Yeah, no, not a category. In terms of a demographic, we do a lot with first-time buyers. Just, I guess, a funny story with that. I was on a Zoom call a month or two ago, and I just started laughing while I was talking to these two buyers. They were young. They were about 26, 27, and they were just looking at me, and I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, there's nothing you said. There's nothing on your face. I was like, I just had this thought when I first started. Like, I worked with a lot of, new buyers that was about their age, and now
I see where this is going.
And now, like, just based on how I say certain things, and how you guys look at me, like I'm now, I'm now kind of like an older lender, and. So, but we still, we take such a huge education, or we place such a huge emphasis on education within the process that a lot of our partners, like to refer as first-time buyers.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that's a hard one, right? Mm-hmm. I enjoy most when I find youthful talent to work for us, because they normally have new ideas that they bring with them, and that's a mutually beneficial endeavor.
Yep.
And I also treasure people that come to us with loads of experience because they have stability that they bring with them, right? So like those are two different ways to build businesses, and I think both are equally important, right? But we do have a young crew here, and I know that Keith is not too much younger than I. Danielle, our admin, is about our age as well, and so we exchange a lot of inside jokes about pop culture when we were growing up, but some of them don't land with our younger audience, and when you realize that one of those moments for me, it wasn't very funny, obviously, at all, but when I realized that I had hired somebody who was born after 9/11, that was sobering.
Yeah, that
was sobering because I'm like you're not too different from my kids' ages at that point, and ouch, and it's not so much the age as much as it is what has happened prior to that versus after. And there's a lot of industry changes that shifted, not just in real estate, but in business in general. The .com era, heralded in, or ushered in rather, some significant mindset changes along with it. I was talking about the phone book the other day, and I can't even remember the context in which I was talking about it. But like I had my daughter with me, and she's like, "Phone book? What's that?" And I'm like, "No, don't say that." Like just stuff like that happens, and I can't imagine having that aha moment right in front of a younger client.
I had it on a Zoom call, and fortunately they were fine with it.
Okay,
but yeah, so
that's great.
Yeah, it's to the point. It's a I really don't mind it. And it's, I would like nothing more than to genuinely be doing the same thing I'm doing now at a different level. Okay. In another, 10, 20 years, it just means you constantly adapted to, what was required at the time.
Yep. You saw a growth opportunity and you took it.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, that's, I think that that's a good general mindset to have, because you are opening up yourself to what could be. Yep. Versus chasing after a specific goal or outcome. And that's how we do things over here. It's not so much if you do this all day, you might grow just because you do it really well. But that's more of a relying on your clients to let you grow versus availing yourself to the ability to grow. Correct. Right? Two different ways of growing. I think, for me anyway, I derive a lot more fulfillment from the big question marks and say, what is that over there? And what if we did this instead of that? Let's not back ourselves into a corner and do it the way that we've always done it. Yep. Shake up the tree, like try to do something fresh and new, not for the purpose of doing something fresh and new, because that is exhausting as well. Yes. But when you see that something is getting stale, or see that a system needs attention and a new set of ideas, bring in a consultant. Hey, we're too close to this problem to see the solution. Can you help me with this kind of thing? Or sit on a podcast and have a spirited conversation with somebody else in a completely different line of work, so that you can challenge each other's ideas. This is why networking groups and mastermind groups do really well when they are approached in these kinds of formats. Not so much the podcast format, but talking about hey, I got a problem, you got a moment kind of thing,
And that's one of the things that we've turned to, mastermind groups over the last couple of years.
Yep. Are you currently involved in one?
Yes.
Where?
Yep. Over in Westford.
Okay.
And it's, when we were putting it together, me and another lady, her name's Allie, she's a fantastic agent, but
Ludwig?
Yes.
Nice. Yeah. I love Allie.
Yeah, she's
I
great.
photographed her son's wedding.
Okay. Yeah, she's awesome. But so when we were talking about it, it was like there's so many people that want hey, we're meeting this day and my goals for the next 30 days are, to get a listing or to get a buyer under contract.
Right.
And it was like, we want to stay away from that.
Yeah, that's
like,
B&I.
Like, yeah, like we don't want that.
Yeah.
We want, like, hey, like take Allie. She's in the process of hiring somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of discussion about like what worked for us, what didn't, what parameters to put in place to make sure they're not put into a position that they're not, either comfortable with, or they don't know what their duties are.
Yep.
Like that kind of stuff. And it's so much more fulfilling. It's the bigger questions that there is no right answer. And
those are the best questions.
They are. And
because you get to kind of see the field at that point.
Exactly. You get, 6 or 7 different perspectives on a problem you're having.
Yeah.
And, and you have those kind of discussions with enough people for long enough, you can't help but build a great relationship.
Absolutely.
You can't help it.
Right. Because it's a more holistic approach to it's not a transactional problem.
Yes.
It's a design problem. It is a mindset, challenge. And I guess problem's maybe not even the right word, right? Like it's a challenge, it's a hurdle, it's a stumbling point or whatever. But therein lies the growth opportunity, right? That discomfort is the best part. And living in that perpetual state of discomfort selectively, right? Like it's not about like, hey, I just want to be uncomfortable for my entire life kind of thing. It's more along the lines of consciously choosing to be uncomfortable in certain situations and settings. And then of course, having your respite, your safety, your nest kind of thing, right? So having that ability to go between those two mindsets it's extremely rewarding.
Yeah.
For the right people. Other people, that's scary as all hell. Right?
Yeah. And you said it perfectly there, but having those two mindsets, because I'm sure, you've seen it or talked to people. There, I think more so over the last couple of years when, the market's gotten tougher, I've seen so many people in our industry, whether they chose to or not, if subconscious, but just kind of go inward and shy away from anything that was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like a lot of those people now are, have a shell of their former business or aren't in the business. And it's, again, maybe they didn't even realize they were doing it, but they didn't want to be uncomfortable. And you have to, I'm a big believer in all aspects of life. Like you kind of always have to be pushing yourself. Recently, no shame in saying it, I've been talking to a therapist this year, and he's helped me tremendously with, having a little bit of grace with yourself, slowing down.
That's a big one.
It's huge. And like, 'cause me, just how my brain works, like I'm sitting on the couch at night, I'm like, I could be doing something. I could be tweaking a system, or I could be going to the gym again, or, something like that. So it's like you're saying, to put yourself in those situations, have them at whatever it is, like work out in the morning, go to work, work on things that are uncomfortable, do things you don't want to do to better yourself. I just like as people, I think it makes us better.
It does. I think the most important part of that construct, if you would, or that the balance of it all, is that you're doing it in an intentional way where you're not haphazardly working through the discomfort. Unless, of course, sometimes people fall into an uncomfortable situation because they just do, right? Yep. And so you can't really avoid that a heck of a lot. But what you can do is kind of meter it out a little bit. And so that you can, just how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And by doing it with that approach, but knowing that you have to get through that, so consciously taking it on, that is right there where the success hits. Procrastinating on it, recognizing that it's there, and just constantly delaying on it intentionally or even subconsciously doing that, that is to our own detriment. And when I say detriment, I don't mean that things are going to fail or falter or just fall apart. It just means that they might not grow, right? If you never put Miracle Grow to a plant, it's probably still going to grow if you keep it watered. It's just not going to get to the size that you might want it to, right? And that's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just, what are your goals, right?
And the goal part of it is huge,
right?
And again, personally, I had such a hard time for honestly far too long. It obviously says something about me, but the people that didn't have goals or didn't want to grow, I couldn't comprehend it.
Okay.
And it took me, I genuinely, I don't know. I have a 2-year-old, so I don't know if it's, kind of, I've seen things differently since I became a father.
Yeah. It'll do that.
Like stuff like, I don't know when exactly it was, but it's like, hey,
it just sneaks up on you.
but just not everybody wants to be doing this.
No.
And that was very hard for me to understand.
Can I challenge you on something on that
course.
though?
Yeah.
You used two terms interchangeably, and I take contest with that. And because I primarily because I used to believe or talk the same, and I know that I've consciously changed the way that I talk about this. Specifically in regards to having goals and wanting to grow. I think that it's very easy to not realize how much growth is required in order to have the goals that we have. So we're not prepared for that.
Yep.
And a lot of times from the outside, what looks like lack of goals is actually a goal for somebody, right?
Yeah.
Because if their goal is stasis, they can choose into that.
Yep.
Right. And that's okay.
Yep.
For them.
Correct. Yeah.
It doesn't fit us. But that's also why we own businesses.
Correct. And that was when somebody say was just, hey, I'm content where I am.
Yeah.
I've done this for 25 years.
Yep.
I'm fine.
Yep.
Doing this level of production or even less. Like for whatever reason, for years, I had a problem with that.
Yeah.
I was like, what's wrong with this person?
Sure.
Like, I don't like you.
Sure. You didn't understand it.
Correct. Yeah. And like eventually my eyes opened. I was like, wait, you're wrong, Matt. Like this isn't, you can't think about it like
it's because you bought into something probably. Like I know that for us as a culture, we've been sold on the idea of the hustle. Right. And I think that there's value in that, right? Like I'm not anti-hustle culture. Like I think that there is some significant takeaways to be learned from that mindset. I think that it is even healthy to a degree if your goals are in fact realized on the other side of it, right? So if your hustle is to turn this 10,000 a year into 100,000 a year, and you have a pathway that you kind of see a little bit. You don't even have to carve it out. Just like if you have a vision and you have the ability and the time and the energy to throw at it, go for it. If that's your goal. If you're doing it because you feel that you're obligated to do it, well, that's a whole other story entirely. And that's where the therapist comes in and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think that looking at our former selves over time says a lot about who we are. And the ability to reflect on our former selves says even more about who we now are, right? And I think that's awesome that you're bringing that up because you're having an argument with your former self, or maybe like face palming your former self, right?
Punching my former self in the face.
What's
wrong with you?
But it's not so much what's wrong with you. Like, look how far you've come to the point where you can even do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's definitely that's the silver lining from it.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I think that's huge. I'm happy that I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. I feel like I'm very lucky in the fact that that saying you gotta be careful lying to yourself because you're the easiest person to fool. Like that type of thing. Like I've always had a pretty. I've always had a very good ability to not BS myself.
Okay.
And just be very blunt at times, too blunt
to yourself,
to myself. And that's all stuff that just that side of it, I've consciously worked on for a decent amount of time to get to a place where I still, if I don't know, just say I have a bad day, right? Bad day to me is, not doing what I think I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Right. So that's a bad day for me. And, before that would eat me up. I wouldn't sleep at night.
Yeah.
I'd wake up at 4 a.m. Like, I got to get to the office.
Yeah.
I got to get back on track, and now it's sit at home, and be like, I didn't have a great day today. That's all right. I've had whatever, look at it in the bigger picture. I've had a very good year, or I've had a great month, good week.
I may not have had the best day, but I did my best today.
Yeah. And, tomorrow's another day.
Yeah.
I can do better tomorrow.
Sure.
So that's just, for me, that took a while to get to.
It being a conscious decision, right?
Yep.
Versus feeling compelled to always, hit it.
Yeah. Cause for years it was just, okay, you have a bad day. Takes forever to go to sleep. Wake up at 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5
I suck
o'clock.
so much.
I got
that's
so
a
much
hard
stuff
one
to do.
That's a hard one. Yeah. I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
I also don't BS myself. I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
And I have to say that my wife, Jen, does a phenomenal job at talking me off my ledges. I literally just before this podcast, I had a very spirited back and forth with her about a challenge that I'm having personally and business wise, and something that I'm just trying to navigate around mentally. And she is immensely supportive in mapping it out, not necessarily telling me what I should do, right? She just asks these poking hole questions, just enough to the point where it gets my mind unstuck and answering something more sensible or critical or whatever that is not a reflection of inward. It's more of a reflection of outward. And then I can say, hey, wait a second, I can see around this problem all of a sudden, right? And she's phenomenal with helping me get there. And I definitely rely on that. And I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that. I'd, probably be having different kinds of conversations, right? And so it's healthy to do that. But yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey.
And one of the, so I got there over the last couple of years, and it was very recently. Again, talking to the therapist, he was really pushing grace.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm very, I'm not, I am. I'm like, if I'm going to do something, I'm just going all in.
Okay.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right.
You're either doing it or you're not.
Right?
There's no in betweens.
So I'm going to give myself grace. I'm going to, this is just my brain. So forgive me in advance, but I'm sitting on the couch eating Sour Patch Kids every
Don't
night.
apologize for yourself.
Yeah. So I'm eating Sour Patch Kids. I'm not working out. I'm taking it easy at work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, this is grace.
Yeah.
It's okay. You get a lot going on.
Yep.
And then, I had after a couple of days of that, right, I was like, wait a minute. I don't feel good right now. I don't feel.
Got it.
I don't feel like I thought I was going to feel.
Right.
I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
Not worrying about it. And, the next time I talked to him, I was like, hey, I've been trying this for the last couple of weeks, but last week I really may have taken it too far. I think I'm somebody that just needs, or I can't say just needs. I'm somebody that does better.
Yeah.
When I have things that I'm constantly
I like your
towards.
rewording on that,
right?
For the record.
Yes, not just needs. I'm somebody that does better with that.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, that's cool. We tried it. It didn't work for you.
Right.
If this is what's better for you, that's what this is all about. We're trying to find what's better for you.
And there still can be grace within that.
Correct.
Right? It's not mutually exclusive.
No.
Which is the best part about self-controlling your RPMs, right? If you have those pre-installed or those intentionally installed limiters in yourself, you aren't getting into the burnout, and you're not you're not getting into the low end either, where you're just at a stasis, right?
Out,
Yep. Right. So you need to be able to get through those gradations of busyness, but not having it be busy work, but having it be productive and fulfilling, while also having that, okay, I did great. I took 3, 4, or 5 days to just really pound it. And now I'm going to coast down this hill for a couple days, and then I'm back at it again. And having that on and off and on and off, that is balance.
It is.
Balance isn't about that every day is equal. It's about some days we go hard and some days we just go slow.
Yep.
And we just have to, kind of shift in between those two gears. But doing it consciously and not because we have this innate, unnamed thing that we just can't really, tease out of ourselves. Yeah. So, Matt, I didn't expect our conversations to go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I could talk at another couple hours on this.
Yeah, no,
easily. It's been a pleasure having you in the studio.
Likewise. Thank you.
Let's do this again.
Absolutely.
I'd like to have a reconnection at some point. And pass me along the info for your mastermind group. I'd be potentially interested if you guys are looking for other people to be part of it. It's a bit challenging for me sometimes just because of our work schedule and locations and stuff like that. But one thing that I'm definitely sorely missing for the past few years is I haven't been doing mastermind groups since COVID.
Okay.
I stopped working with a business coach about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And since then, there's been a lot of echo chambers in my head. And that's not a good place for them to be. So
the coach part of it's big.
It is.
It's a double-edged sword.
It is. And I think that he was doing a great job while he was working with me. We had just reached a point in the business that had started to exceed his capacity. And so I need to level up from that. And that's the hard part because, with 16 employees, essentially depending on, my leadership, I need to make sure that I'm staying nice and sharpened.
Exactly.
So, anyhow, Matt, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.